right, so this is just a continuation of functions. So on this one, and the last video, we looked at how we could define a function and have it do something. All right. So what that one was doing, it was just calling it in draw. So let me just bring that one back up. Oops. All right. So this one was just calling our function. Every time it entered draw, it would say draw black circle. It would come down here and it would do that. All right. So I just want to, on this video, just talk about how some other ways we could use functions, because they're incredibly powerful, right? And so here I've done something just a little bit different, and I'm saying if the mouse is pressed, if the mouse is down, then draw the black circle. So you can see we can apply it some conditionals to it. So if I go up here, here's my window, there, pressing the mouse, pressing the mouse, pressing the mouse. So that gives me some controls over when the function is called. In the previous example, it's just being called all the time. Here, I'm just having it being called specifically when this event happens. All right. So you can see the flexibility of functions. Now, one thing I want to say, you may be sitting there thinking, well, I could just do this. I could do, I could come in here and I wouldn't have to do this. I could just get rid of that and just have this whole thing happen in here. And that would operate in exactly the same way. So why do I need to then write a function? You may be wondering that. Well, the reason, there's a few reasons. First of all, if your code gets super full, right? Like there is a ton of stuff going on in your draw, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what is happening. Being able to create these little modules or little functions helps your code make sense. It helps it will help you to be able to read it better. And also, and I think equally important, it allows you to read, like let's say you wanted to do this 50 times. Instead of writing that all out 50 times, you could just call this, right? And every time you called it, it would come down here and do this. So it makes your code a lot more efficient and much easier to read. All right, so let me move on to my next sketch. And at the end of these videos today, we're going to combine all these things. We're going to combine functions and arrays and images, and that is where the really incredible fun stuff starts. All right. So the problem with the last function I wrote, both of these, okay? Whatever you're calling the function, whenever we're saying, hey, go draw that black circle, it's always the same. All right? So like we saw before, if I called this more than once, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference because it would just draw the circle right over the other circle. So we need to change that a little bit. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pass some parameters. I'm going to comment some of this out here. There we go. All right. Actually, let me just comment this out. And let's look at this one first. Okay, so in the last example, when we had our function, all right, these little parentheses were empty. There was nothing in them. So now if we look here, I've got things in them. These are called parameters. So what I'm saying here is I'm setting up my function, and I'm saying I'm declaring some variables here. All right. So I'm saying there's this thing that's going to be an integer, and I'm calling it f for fill. Then there's an integer which I'm calling x. Then there's an integer which I'm calling y, and then one that I'm calling w, and then one that I'm calling h. All right. And then you can see that I'm using this number here for my fill. And whatever number is the x, I'm using for the x placement. Whatever number's here, I'm going to use for my Y placement. This number here, I'm going to use for the width of my circle. And this number here, I'm going to use for the height of my circle. So now you're probably wondering, well, where did those come from? And I'm going to show you. All right. Just one thing I want to point out. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. That's important because when we go back up here to where I'm calling, let's see, where I call my function, draw a black circle, I have to give it 5 integers. If I give it 4, it's going to throw an error. If I give it 1, it's going to throw an error. And if I give it 6, it's going to throw an error. All right, so, sorry, I've got a lot of comments in here, but, all right, so again, if I look down here, so what, this is, and the book does a good job of kind of explaining, and this is, by the way, in chapter 7, this is like kind of playing catch. You know, you're passing information from here to here. So I'm going to put in 4 integers. The first one I'm going to call, this is going to be my fill. So that can be a number between 0 and 255. I'm just dealing with one gray level of gray. I'm going to say 150. And then the second number here is going to be the X placement of my circle. And the third number here is going to be the Y. The fourth number is going to be my width, and the fifth number is going to be my height. So if I run this, okay, there's my circle. Now here's why this is nice, right? Because I can do this again. I want to do it again, and I'm just going to change some of these. See, that's going to be, I don't want it to be black. I'll make it 50. And then, let's see, I'll just plug in some different numbers here so you can see. So now it's drawing a different circle because at different places in different different gray because I'm passing different parameters here. All right. So again, first number is going to be my F, and it just goes in order. The first number, the second number, the third number, the fourth number, the fifth number. The first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And then it plugs those values in, right? So this is a variable, so I've called it F, and I'm just telling, hey, whatever they say F is, we're going to make that my fill. All right? So you're quite literally passing information from where you're calling the function to where the function executes. If this doesn't make sense to you, what I would suggest is this. Play with it, right? I'll give you some of these files or take Schiffman's example files and start changing the values. And you'll start kind of connecting. Oh, okay, that's what that's doing. And that's a really great way to learn. That's how I learned almost all of my coding because there weren't classes like this for me. So yeah, play around with it. Now I want to show you another way of handling this, which is, this is where it gets really fun. All right. So here, I'm calling my draw black circle. I'm saying if the key pressed, and I am looking for key A or capital A, and then I'm saying, hey, then go draw this black circle at the mouse X and mouse Y. And down here, I've changed this. This is another one. So here, this is a same function, but I've just written it differently, so now it only has 2 parameters. So I'm using these, the mouse X and the mouse Y, and I'm plugging it in for the fill, and the X, and the Y, and the width, and the height of my ellipse. So let's see what that does. Okay, so again, I have to press A. And if I wanted, of course, I could take out the background and do some really fun things. We've done this a little bit, but here you can see the viewer now has a little more control over the placement. Now you can imagine, hopefully, all the kind of amazing things you could do, right? If we take our friend random over here, which we did the other day, right? We could set up a random, some random numbers that would populate this, right? Let's say every time we press the key, it spits out a random number and pops it in here, all right? So what I would encourage you to do is think about how you could do that. And you could go back to our random demo, all right, which was, I forget which video that was, but it was a few videos ago. And this suddenly becomes a really powerful, complex function. Now, one thing I'll just say, and I'm not going to talk about this a lot, but we talked a little bit about void. And all my functions that I've written here actually say void. But we can have a function that, what this means is hard to explain, but this means it doesn't return anything. Okay, so that probably means nothing to you. But let's compare it to something like an int. Do math. I'll call this function do math. All right. And let's say it's got a couple parameters in here, and I'm drawing a blank on math names. Okay, m and int o. And let's say this function does some math in here, all right? So what it would return, and don't worry too much, if this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. Honestly, for the artist in the room, you probably won't be using this as much. But I just want to point it out so maybe it'll help void make a little more sense. So if we have something that returns an int, I'm called it do math, it comes in here, it does something, and then it spits out a number, all right, that you can use elsewhere. This doesn't spit out anything except for a circle, which is not a data type. So if you want more information on that, the book talks about that somewhere. I want to say page 127 maybe. But again, for the artists or people just starting out, you'll be fine just working with the simple functions. All right, so that's it. The next video is going to be on arrays, and then I'm going to do one on images, and then we're going to combine them. Yay. All right.